sex, and gender justice. I would like to announce that recording is in progress. And I am pleased to welcome you on behalf of the board and team of Caiso Sex and Gender Justice to this media conference. My name is Kathy Shepard, and I am one of 4 directors of Caiso Sex and Gender Justice. And with me this morning, I have fellow director, Angelique Nixon, Kellogg and Kim Colum, our research and program officer. We have Johanna Ray Rez, who will be doing sign interpretation for our deaf participants. She's also a member of the Caiso team, our outreach officer. And we also have with us Danielle Jones, our community lawyer. We will be having pre-recorded messages from our community therapist, Akila Riley Richardson, and community caseworker, Ray Alabi. So just to remind you of why we are here, today, or not today, in 2 days, we will be commemorating the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, which was created in 2004 to draw attention to the violence and discrimination experienced by lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex people, and all other people with diverse sexual orientations, gender identities or expressions, and sex characteristics. It was first celebrated in 2011 in Trinidad and Tobago, and the idea for the day was spearheaded by a Martinican and another Caribbean person, George Louis-Ter, on May 17th, and the day was chosen to commemorate the World Health Organization's decision in 1990 to declassify homosexuality as a mental disorder. So without further ado, I would like to invite Angelique Nixon, fellow director, to give an overview of the Wholeness and Justice program. Angelique.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And thank you so much for being here, all members of the media, our partners, our civil society partners, and a number of our Caiso team members and volunteers and friends. So just quickly to remind you all, Caiso is a feminist LGBTQI+ organization, civil society organization. We've been working for over a decade on advancing and affirming LGBTQI rights and freedoms. You can see our vision and mission. We do this through mobilizing forward-thinking, visionary, and human rights approach to wholeness, justice, and inclusion for Trinidad and Tobago's LGBTQI+ communities through developing analysis, alliances, and advocacy. About wholeness and justice really emerges through and is guided by both our vision and mission. The program was established in 2020. Really through our long years of work and in collaboration with partners like Friends for Life and other LGBT organizations in Trinidad and Tobago, just giving a shout out to the fact that Wholeness and Justice really came out of the Alliance for Justice and Diversity and our work together and thinking about how best to meet the needs of LGBTQI+ people in Trinidad and Tobago, our communities. And so it was established to expand access to wholeness, justice, and social services. And we respond directly to violations that LGBTQI+ people experience. The program has a special emphasis on trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and intersex people. And that's because our communities, specifically these identities and experience disproportionate amounts of violations and discrimination. And so overall, the program really seeks to deliver clinically competent, trauma-informed interventions that enable healing and resilience. And so Wholeness and Justice is really focused on responding to violations, and we conceive of violations broadly. So a violation is any action or an inaction that infringes on a person's human rights. Now that can happen intentionally, for example, abuse or violence from a person, authority, or an institution, or by omission, meaning a failure to protect from harm. And so when we define violations in our program, we include a number of broad examples of that. So again, abuse from authorities and or individuals, infringement on one's safety and security, the state's failure to protect from abuse, exploitation, and or discrimination, and also any infringement on equality before the law and due process. The services that we offer at Wholeness and Justice include legal support and advocacy, counseling, competence building of justice and service systems, strategic litigation, policy advocacy, and community level outreach. The three service provision areas are legal, clinical and social services, and wholeness development. We engage also in capacity building with a number of service providers and also our fellow partner organizations. So the legal services, I'm going to go over this really quickly. All of this is available when you contact or look up anything about Wholeness and Justice on our website and on our socials, and we'll remind you of those later. But legal, again, we focus on offering clients services around any kind of violation. And we begin with a preliminary consultation with our community lawyer, and we provide from guidance to advice and to also a number of other kinds of legal services. And of course, this is will happen based on our resources and capacity. Sometimes we have to engage with referral partners and institutions. And then our clinical and social services, we want to offer interventions because of quite a number of our clients experience different kinds of traumatic events based on violations. And so we offer mental and emotional support, particularly for our clients who are going through and accessing legal services, going through different institutions and the legal process. The whole philosophy of wholeness and justice is one that we recognize and have prioritized the fact that people come to us as whole beings, and we want to support people in the process of trying to get access to legal redress, because so often as many people are left out of access to justice, and our communities are sometimes doubly, triply marginalized in that process. So our clinical and social services support people through a variety of different kinds of interventions. And our clinical team is really helps and supports clients through day-to-day challenges, coping with different experiences of violation and trauma. And finally, wholeness development. This is another aspect that connects actually both legal and clinical, and then provides even further support for our clients, because so many things affect our communities. And so we address issues from housing instability, food insecurity, lack of access to safe transportation, lack of access to healthcare, and on. And we recognize the ways that these experiences actually increase our clients and LGBTQ+ communities' risk to further violence. And so we see this as an important part of our process. Now, how can you get services? You can contact the program. You can see the information there by email or phone. We are available, WhatsApp, email, and we respond as quickly as can. We are not an emergency service, but we do our best to respond as soon as we can. And once someone, including referrals, we are contacted by someone, we engage with a violation assessment. We ensure one's eligibility for the program. Then we conduct a team assessment. And then we go into a preliminary legal consultation and or a clinical pre-assessment. And then we map the intervention plan. Just to see our team here, we have Kellogg, our program and research officer, who really does a large part of the coordination of the program. Danielle, our community lawyer, Ray, our community caseworker, Akila, our community therapist, and Alron and I offer board oversight and management support. And we also have Joanna, who is our community outreach officer generally for Caiso and also supports our homeless and justice work. And now I am happy to call upon Kellogg to go through our insights report.
Hi, everyone. So I will be just going through providing a very brief overview of what our insights look like for the 2022 period. So just to begin, this is snapshots of services. So within the last year, we would have had 47 intakes. And just to differentiate between what an intake and an enlistment is, like Angelique would have mentioned earlier, once there's a call, we do violation assessments, engage some form of program eligibility process. And so that at that point, that's the intake point. The enlistment point is when, once we've determined that person to be eligible for the program and we've done an assessment and all those other things, and the person has agreed to engage services with the program, then they become a client. So that's the disparity between the intakes for the year and the new client enlistment. And since December 2020, when we had begun providing services to December 2022, we would have had a total of 63 clients. Right now, well, at the beginning of this year, we would have had 20 open cases. So we had gone through a very much needed review process of the program, services, and clients. And so in doing that, we would have closed out a number of cases. And we didn't just like dump people. Those are cases that had come to its end, especially in 2022, when we had, between 2021 and 2022, when we had engaged a number of people outside of our primary mandate. So we had just engaged people who required LGBTQI plus people who required mental health support through the lockdown period. As you know, a lot of them would have found themselves in very precarious living situations with family members who were either hostile or were unaware of their gender identity and or sexual orientation. So this is a distribution of the services that were offered last year and continue to be offered, but this is how people engaged with the program. So here we have legal services, clinical services, homeless development services. Those are the three main service areas, as Angelique would have mentioned earlier. However, people engage the program on multiple fronts. So we have people who receive a combination of services. It could be any 2-3 combinations. So we have people who receive legal and clinical, legal and wholeness, clinical and wholeness, or all three. And this distribution of services is just dependent on the person's needs. And so there isn't a specific kind of quota that we try to meet in terms of how the services are distributed. It's just we're primarily concerned with responding to the person's whole needs. So that includes their legal, their emotional, mental, as well as their other life needs, which comes under the Wholeness Development Service distribution. This is just a closer look at how the client's distribution in terms of gender identity and sexual orientation. We offer services to LGBTQI plus people, so it's important that we are able to demarcate who we are providing services to and just how that's distributed. But all of this is provided in the insights report, which will be available on our website. This is just a snapshot again of insights from legal services. These are the numbers, but I wanted to just highlight a couple things or a couple legal interventions from last year that will come up in the key insights. So for instance, we dealt with contentious landlord and tenant situations. We've assisted a number of people with deed poll applications for name change. We have interacted with a number of people who were involved in intimate partner violence, who were victims, survivors of intimate partner violence. We've assisted with social services navigation. We have 4 ongoing strategic litigation matters, and we've also dealt with unfair dismissal matters relating to employment issues. And for clinical, our clinical team provides support and intervention for clients with legal cases. Again, just reiterating that whole idea of providing holistic support to people who've experienced violations. Our clinical team also assist clients who are managing multiple issues related to their mental health. So, for example, anxiety, depression, stress, all of which are exacerbated by homophobia and transphobia, which is we delve into a little more in our insights analysis. We have a number of people as well who have experienced family violence and so have severe and ongoing trauma related to that. And part of that as well, part of our clinical and wholeness development work is, the referral that we've done for folks who've needed much deeper psychiatric intervention. So we've made provisions for some of those people as well through a referral partner. And lastly, insights from our wholeness development service provision. We've assisted over 30 people have contacted the program in need of housing. So that is going to come up later as well, because it really shows the kinds of demand that there is for safe and affordable housing for LGBTQI plus people. We've assisted folks with social and emergency services and navigating those. We've provided emergency food support to a number of people as well. Some clients, some not clients. This will come up later. And we've received a number of requests from parents who are seeking to support LGBTQI plus youth. So things are hopeful on that end as well, because we're seeing that more and more parents really want to get involved and find out how they can support their LGBTQI plus people in their lives. And so the program is finding ways to respond to that and to provide that kind of support to parents. And these are our main insights from this year. Firstly, we've noticed that through client experience and the work that we've done, we're able to kind of corroborate what we already knew about structural discrimination inhibiting LGBTQI plus people's access to public services. So while folks attempt to receive public services, they are faced with experiences of discrimination, harassment from just harmful behaviors and attitudes from public servants or service providers. There are also things that are systemically embedded into these services that keep LGBTQI plus people and other vulnerable groups at the door. And so we will see things come up in terms of people of trans experience and just the difficulties that they have in navigating social services and accessing them. More as well, we see that a number of LGBTQI plus people, for the community, housing instability, food insecurity, and family violence remains prevalent. And in many ways, all these 3 things, although they might seem very distinct, and they are distinct, they aren't mutually exclusive. So these things inform each other and exacerbate each other. A number of LGBTQI plus people are presenting with multiple and often competing issues. Now, this is a particular concern because of, for instance, these issues like housing instability, food security, family violence. It forces folks to sort of kind of prioritize what they need. So when they do experience violations, a lot of times their last, or not, I won't say last, but their first thought isn't, okay, let me see how I could get legal redress. Their first thought is always, okay, but I need to eat. I have my basic life needs, human needs that need to be met. And so these are where my concerns are. And so we have a lot of people who, although there might be avenues available for them to seek redress and access redress, they don't go in search of services for redress. And so this also could affect how the numbers show up as well on our national level. Likewise, the Wholeness and Justice Program responds to the needs of the community. And so, like I said, I mentioned earlier, We would have provided extensive mental health support to LGBTQI+ people during the lockdown periods. And so just some of those things that we see that, there's a gap in terms of on a national level that LGBTQI+ people just can't access or don't have access to. And so we try as best as possible to respond to these needs and fill in the gaps. And the responses are also seen in the emergency food support and types of support that we provide for folks outside of clinical and legal intervention. In our insights report this year, we've taken the approach of creating profiles of presenting problems. Now, people who come to the program, they come to us with one primary issue or problem in mind. For instance, I am having employment issues. This is what is happening. This is what I need help with. But in, undergoing the different assessment processes and conversation and just moving through the process, we really notice that there are a number of intersecting issues that come up in folks' experience. So for instance, again, with employment issues, people might also be experiencing family violence, they might be experiencing housing instability, food insecurity, those kind of things show up. And so we really wanted to, we wanted to pay attention to those things and see how they show up and the trends that are happening. And so in the report, we've distributed these services, these presenting problems. We've ordered him here according to prevalence. So 33% of our clientele would have come to us for mental health support, 21 social services navigation, 18 employment issues, and so on and so forth. And here we're seeing how some of these intersecting issues show up. So like, for instance, with mental health, we have 83% of people who came to us for mental health support having a history of mental health challenges. 33% of these people experiencing family instability, 31 PTSD, 31 also experiencing suicidal ideation. We have 31% of them as well who have also experienced sexual violence, and then 31 relationship challenges. But you get to see some of these more intimately and spend time with them and make your own assessments as well when you interact with the insights reports. We have a client testimonial here as well. So some of that is also available in the insights report document, as well as key interventions. So again, here with social services navigation, we're seeing 75% of people who came to us with for social services navigation experiencing housing instability, 63 experiencing job insecurity, folks having health complications, some folks living with HIV. And so we delve into a lot of these and how these issues intersect in our analysis. Our key intervention. So because for social services navigation, we spent time engaging referral partners, mainly, including the Living Water community for LGBTQI+ migrants, as well as navigation of public assistance for nationals and completing paperwork for national grants. So this is important because it really goes to show how far referral partnership is and referral partner engagement is. We can't do this work alone, and we don't do this because we don't exist in silos. So we endeavor to continue strengthening our partner relationships with different organizations and program, both NGOs and national organizations as well, so that LGBTQI+ people's needs are being met, and ensure that the LGBTQI+ people's needs are being met. We see some of the legal issues here that show up for folks who needed social services navigation. We see some folks experiencing public discrimination and harassment, among other legal issues. Employment issues is another one. We see again how some of these issues intersect. So people who are experiencing employment issues, we've noticed that 57% of them had experiencing housing instability, community violence, family violence, suicidal ideation, financial insecurity, and a host of other issues. And for this as well, we spend, like I said, partner relationships are really important to the work that we do. And so with folks who had experienced employment issues, our community lawyer will speak on this in a little bit, but we spent quite some time engaging workers' union, particularly national workers' union, because they are the experts on employment issues, and we've just noted the need for the wider LGBTQI plus communities, education, the role of unions, and how to access unions. More unemployment issues, folks who would have needed name changes. And just to say, the name change process has really been beneficial to our trans and non-binary and genderqueer clients who really need or seeking for different ways to affirm their identities. But we see some of the issues that happen or that show up for them as well. We've had folks who'd experienced intimate partner violence, again, distribution of issues. All of this comes up in the insights report, so they will be available there when you have a look. Public discrimination and harassment as well. These issues are here, but just noting particularly as well that some of these, the perpetrators of discrimination and harassment have been the police. And so we spent time using the complaints mechanisms that's for the police, so the PCA and the PCD, just to report on instances of LGBTQI plus experiences of police abuse of power from police officers. And now, switching gears a little bit, we're gonna have just hear a little from our clinical team about the work that we've done over the past year in relation to some of these presenting problems. In just a second, yes, here we go.
The LGBTQI community and persons who will experience various. Hi everyone, my name is Akila Riley Richardson and I'm the community therapist for Caiso, Sex and Gender Justice, particularly the Wholeness and Justice program. We work with the LGBTQI community and persons who will experience various forms of trauma. So once somebody comes in to the program, to the caseworker, and the caseworker believes that this person needs advanced or more in-depth treatment as a result of unresolved trauma, in that case, they would need to see me. So what are the various kinds of trauma that our people would experience? Well, first of all, childhood and family trauma. And what do I mean by that? We have persons who would have been rejected by their families. They would have been removed, forcibly removed from their homes at the hands of their families, and to this day still experience rejection from their families. And as you can imagine, that is deeply painful. It is unresolved, and people often don't have other spaces to be able to speak about that. And so when they come into us, sometimes we're working through that as well. Additionally, persons may have experienced various forms of violations, some sexual violations, some physical violations, and they will be seeing our community lawyer as a result. But what happens is that often persons may feel so invisible in our present legal and judicial system that as well, just feeling invisibilized by that system complicates or adds to the trauma. And so they need to see the community therapist as well. Additionally, persons may have this pervasive sense of just feeling unsafe. And we call that endurance trauma. And some could even call it minority stress. It's a term that is often used in our field. So minority stress refers to just this persistent, this stress on the body. It's chronic, it's pervasive, and most importantly, it's socially created. And when people are experiencing minority stress, it does compromise their mental health as well as their physical health. So when our clients have this pervasive sense of feeling unsafe, which manifests in forms of depression, in depression, anxiety, etc., we find ourselves having to work with clients who experience that as well. I'd say as well that, for so many of our clients, invisibility, and not being able to be yourself, and that's so very real.
Yeah, sorry, the video was cut a little short. But we're gonna move on to hear from our community caseworker.
As part of the clinical team, Hi, my name is Ray, and I am the community case worker at Caiso's Wholeness and Justice. As part of the clinical team, my responsibilities also include helping clients navigate social services at state agencies. We all know that it can be very difficult to get all these documents, to present oneself at government buildings, to get the kind of attention and oftentimes the kind of customer service that we would like to receive, even as cisgender or heterosexual persons. And it can be even more challenging and difficult for persons of queer identities to enter these spaces and operate with some sense of confidence and expect some self-respect and courtesy. Often they come into these spaces with the expectation and sometimes the experience or perceived experience that they have been stigmatized or discriminated against. So essentially what our clinical team here does is bring a more intersectional approach to caring for our clients' psychological well-being. And one of the things we have found is that one of the root causes or one of the constant themes that becomes a threat to their psychological well-being is the fact that many of our clients tend to be underemployed, or more specifically unemployed, or have great challenges with housing. And it could be housing in terms of, one, they are homeless, so they may not think they're homeless because they're bouncing around from one couch to the next couch, a month here or a month there, or they have difficulties paying their rents or finding apartments because landlords are not willing to openly rent out to queer persons. And there's no form of legal redress for people who may have been discriminated against in housing. Also, if you're unemployed, underemployed, the probability that you can actually afford to have housing stability is greatly compromised. And in my mind, I like to think of this as a form of gender-based violence that is structural and somewhat state-sponsored. And what I mean by that is that often we think of gender-based violence in terms of financial violence or psychological violence as being something that is interpersonal. We don't see that as something that exists in public spaces or something that is enacted by the state agencies themselves. So queer persons, or let's say specifically a person of trans experience or a gender non-conforming person, they have a lot of difficulties finding a job and holding a job because there are no protections against the way, for one, their gender markers. So a person who is of trans experience, a trans woman or a trans man, will not have that identity match, may not have the name change that they want, and cannot come to work dressed or presenting as who they intimately know themselves to be. Often when trans persons find work, the employment is usually very much in the informal economy, very far away from the generating sectors of the economy. They work in places where they are treated badly or put to the back of the restaurants or the back of the stores. And it is not usually a very economically safe position. In addition to which, housing is now can be further compounded with the fact that a lot of queer persons, their families tend to either abuse them, whether it is emotionally, psychologically, or physically. So housing is not safe to be at home. They want to move out, they can't afford to move out because they don't have the money to move out, or they are just literally just put out onto the streets and they're just made homeless. These persons might be looking for, let us say, a food card or some sort of public assistance, or in some cases disability, because we also have clients with disabilities. And the issues that they would face generally when they are trying to get help from the state agencies will generally be, one, do you have a fixed address? Usually that becomes the very first barrier to filling out their documentations and getting their cases put into the system to move forward. It's very difficult to come up with a fixed address if, one, you're bouncing around from place to place, or you are living at home with people who don't respect you or don't care for you, and then you have to ask for some form of what do you call it, like a letter saying that yes, this person lives here, this is their address and whatnot, or this is a bill in my name and this person lives here by me. That in itself just shuts down or stagnates the entire process of assessing social service care. So we try to step in the gap and perhaps talk to family members, encourage them to give support, or find if they're with a friend somewhere, ask a friend to do this service for them to help them get, so they could have some documentation of having a fixed address, the system with a food card or rental support. We have 2 clients right now. Rental support is a long and dragged out process. So a lot of the times the landlords are not very willing to wait on these services because they complain that the government takes so long to pay the rent, give the rental support. We also assist them with actually full documentation. For example, we have a deaf client who needed to get a birth paper just to get the process rolling to get some form of disability. We have someone on our team who does sign language, and as an interpreter, she was able to assist this person getting the birth paper from the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and moving on was to doing the documentation for the disability. We also, as part of our social service navigation, would refer clients to public mental health care, places that we know may be more sensitive to gender and sexual orientation issues. So Families in Action might be somewhere we refer persons to if they can afford to pay, because it's not as expensive as private care. We also use the National Family and Social Services as a referee for quite a few of our clients. We have referred to them because some people, because of the mental health care challenges, we don't have the capacity to do long-term care that they would need. And we try to build the person's agency and build their capacity and strengthen these agencies that are supposed to support them by allowing them to access the care they need from the agencies. And in some cases, we do healthcare education to assist healthcare providers, remind them sometimes of their code of ethics, and to assist them with having a more trauma-centered approach to their care for queer persons, and in particular persons of trans identity. Some persons are also challenged with education, so being able to follow the documentation or understanding what the documents require that they have could be a challenge. And we are here as a social navigator to assist them in filling out the documents, explain to them what is required, because at social services you need to literally build a file and have all these documentations that seem really cumbersome. I have them put those documents together to apply for their food cards, to apply for disability. We have a client right now, we're navigating with getting their disability check, as well as public assistance. And lots of persons also look for housing beyond just giving them redress for legal infractions because of or against their human rights. We also tend to the person themselves. We attend to their psychological well-being. We help build their sense of agency and self-advocacy. And that's pretty much what we do when it comes to social navigation.
Okay, that is from our clinical team, Akila, Riley Richardson, and Ray. And now we are gonna hear from our community lawyer, Danielle Jones, who will present our legal insights from this year.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Danielle, the community lawyer. I've been operating in this capacity for the past 2.5 years. I'm responsible for legal services, and legal services include consultation, legal advice, legal representation, guiding and navigating clients through a number of application processes. Example, freedom of information application to get their police report, or to social services to help them fill out the necessary form. If there's an issue with medical documents that are presented, I would query those requests if I think that is unfair legally. There are a number of areas in which I provide these services, legal services, but the most requested services are the name change, intimate partner violence, and public discrimination. So name change is a service requested by our transgender, non-binary, and genderqueer clients. It's a way of sanctioning your identity. So our clients, they are either no longer identify with the sex assigned at birth or gender identity that their parents may have assumed for them. They are coming out, they wish to affirm to the world that this is now my identity and I wish to change my name. It's a way of forcing the world to accept their identity. And it's very important. We all know how names are important to us. And it could be used in two ways. So coming out, if you wish to change your name in that way, or if you are in a same-sex union and you want your partner to adopt your surname in keeping with the normal norms to those who are married, assume their partner's surname, right? They can't get married, but there's a way of assuming your partner's, the union, and showing the world that this is my partner and we are committed to each other. So the name change process is a very simple one. The client, I just have the consultation, they submit their documents for identification, birth certificates, ID, all forms of IDs, whichever they have. And then I ask them which name they wish to assume. They could either drop their entire name or they could drop one of their names, the surname or the forename, or add on names or change the order of their names. There are many ways in which they can do the change, and this process takes from start to finish about 3 to 4 months, right? Give or take, right? With respect to intimate partner violence, well, this is this topic is large, experienced mainly by our transgender client, cis woman, and trans women. They are the main customers that come for legal services with respect to intimate partner violence. And intimate partner violence can be of a current partner or a former partner. And with the amendment of the Domestic Violence Act in 2020, same-sex partners can get relief under the act. Prior to that, the same-sex couple would have had to go under the harassment application under the Offences Against the Persons Act, which is a private criminal complaint. And that process is very difficult for a lay person to navigate. And it's also difficult in terms of evidence collection because the burden of proof is very high. It's beyond reasonable doubt. But under the Domestic Violence Act, it is a gentler burden. So it's a burden of balance of probability. So therefore, and you get a protection order, interim protection, immediately if the court finds that this person is in need of protection. So I want to delve into what has changed. So the Domestic Violence Act now has a category that deals with domestic relationships. And a subcategory of that domestic relationship is dating relationships. So once someone is in an intimate relationship or was in an intimate relationship with another, it doesn't speak of gender identity or strictly for heterosexual couples, as the act before the amendment would have specifically described relationships not living together and of a heterosexual nature, right? So now our transgender clients are able, or persons in same-sex relationship, once it's a dating, intimate relationship, that is dating. Let me just get the exact wording. Dating relationship is defined as a relationship where parties do not live together in the same household, but may engage in romantic, intimate, or sexual relations. So that definition now allows persons to be able to make the application. And the last area that we have is public discrimination of LGBTQI persons. And this is from state agencies. So the police service, health serve healthcare providers, social welfare office, any of those services, because the discrimination is being done by persons who hold public office and are supposed to offer services to all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, no matter what your gender identity or sexual orientation is. So how do I help persons or clients navigate this public discrimination and force them to get the service that they are entitled to? I help them file complaints through the PCA, Police Complaints Authority, Police Complaint Division, which is PCD, also Professional Standards Bureau. I also make them lodge complaints at the regional health authorities through the legal department, as well as social services. We request an audience with the officer in charge of our client's application, and we walk them through. We even accompany them to the police station if they went to the police to get assistance after they have suffered a violation and the police chase them for whatever reason, refuse to take their report, give them substandard service. And then, so I accompany them to the police station or to the social welfare office, or my colleague Ray from the clinical team will accompany clients to the social services. So we want to, there are a number of policies, like for example, the judiciary has this gender equality protocol. It's a nice protocol that has been floated around, but it has not been implemented that a transgender person, when they attend court, what specific pronoun they should be addressed by, their preferred pronoun. And I would like to see that this very good book and protocol that was produced by the Judicial Educational Institute, I'd like to see it implemented in the court proceedings so that it can make clients more comfortable. This is the end of my presentation, and now I will pass you on to Angelique.
Hi, everyone. We are now going to talk a little bit about capacity building and education and our community interventions that we have done through our Wholeness and Justice program. I'm just trying to see properly. Okay, great. I can see now. So I want to highlight several things we've done in 2022 that exist and you can access on Caiso's website and other spaces. So one, of course, we published our first insights from 2021 and our first full year of services that is available. And of course, we also have our 2022, which will be launched this week and what we're presenting today. We also have contributed through our Wholeness and Justice work to two important toolkits. One, Finding an Equal Place at Work, which is a toolkit that supports our workplace policy. And this is one of our interventions at Caiso to create enabling environments and to call on private sector and civil society to engage and enact LGBT policies that are inclusive and create enabling environments while we still waiting for the Equal Opportunity Act to be amended. So this is one of our strategies. And Wholeness and Justice as a program we were able to engage and help create, and this work was led by Kellogg, a toolkit that helps support any organization who wants to implement such a policy. We also launched last year an HIV toolkit specifically around mental health for LGBTQ+ community. It's called Mind Your Business, and it is available on our website. The Wholeness and Justice team contributed a number of different aspects to this toolkit. And so again, that is available. We also last year engaged in a number of different public education efforts, legal education. We continue to support clients through social services navigation, as you heard from Ray. And we have also created a number of legal resource guides that you can find on our website. And we've also completed a policy brief that will be available soon. And this will also be shared in forms of public education this year that offer the public ways of understanding very complicated policies and also, how we understand the legal structures and frameworks, which often are difficult for us to really figure out, well, what are they saying? So we're trying to engage and offer ways for us to understand policies, to understand the law, and therefore expand justice seeking and expand our access to resources that should be available to us. These are some of the clinical webinars we had last year, which were very successful. And they included supporting mental health practitioners, and also we invited community members as well to participate in these webinars. We also had a number of activities, including our living room virtual space, which we created during the pandemic and lockdown period. And so we've had a number of different kinds of activities and workshops and skill sharing for clients and community members to come together. We've also had specific sessions for trans community around Trans Day of Visibility, and also making time for regional conversations, and also engaging with and talking with our community lawyer. Moving along, we want to just give you some highlights of what our community support and wholeness development looks like, not only for our clients. You can see some numbers there, and we explain these numbers more and what the support means in our report. But specifically, our clients sometimes need a range of different kinds of support. And so we do offer that from rental support, medical, transport, and legal and other kinds of fees. And as well, we have engaged in food support. On average, we help 10 to 15 clients, as well as community members who may not be clients, but are in need. And this came out of our work during the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown. And you can see an overview of the priority groups. We had agreed as a team that our priority groups are migrants, people with disabilities, trans and non-binary people, people engaged in informal or sex work, and people living with HIV. And you can see that range, as some people have multiple experiences around these identities. And so what we also did in December was that we had to, because we had such an overwhelming request for food support in particular, we started a community food drive, and we were able to raise enough food and donations and hamper donations to support over 50 people in December. And now I'm going to pass over to Kellogg to talk a little bit more about how Wholeness and Justice provides evidence-based advocacy through our research and policy work.
Thank you so much, Angelique. So through the work of Wholeness and Justice, we have been able to engage in a number of campaigns. One, the work really allows us to, like I mentioned earlier, spot different gaps that exist for members of the LGBTQI+ community, clients, and the community at large. And so we would have taken on some of these advocacy campaigns, beginning with the model LGBTQI+ workplace policy. As you see, or as you've heard, there are a number of employment issues that members of the community experience. And so we're endeavoring to, we created a policy that seeks to enable and create an inclusive environment for LGBTQI+ people in the workplace. And out of that, we began training with a number of different organizations and businesses who have signed on as early adopters and who are very excited and enthusiastic about the policy and want to, ensure that they are engaging in practices that are enabling and inclusive while we wait. We also had the Mapping Injustice campaign. We provided some wholeness and justice insights, especially as it relates to police abuse of power and clients' experiences with police, which really helped and informed some of the work that was done here. And that work was launched on Emancipation Weekend. And so we were present at the Emancipation Village at the Savannah, providing people with information and insights about their rights in relation to police and police abuse. And from that work as well, we've launched a pamphlet which seeks to guide LGBTQI+ people on how to navigate the police service in a way that's safe and ensures that, you know, all their bases are covered and they're protected. Likewise, we've continued the Adult 3 campaign, which is a campaign that is geared towards the Equal Opportunity Act, calling for the act to be amended to include sexual orientation, health condition, and age as protected categories under the act. So that folks who experience discrimination based on any of these statuses, they're able to access redress and be protected. So from the work that we've done in terms of wholeness and justice and the research work, the policy work, we have compiled a number of recommendations, policy recommendations for the government to put in place. Now, it's important to remember that we're not seeking to create any new rights. What we're asking is for the equitable enjoyment of folks, LGBTQI+ people's human rights. And the government as a duty bearer to folks as who are rights holders, they have certain things that they need to do and certain policies that need to be put in place to ensure that LGBTQI+ people are protected and recognized in the country. And the needs are also met. So these include creating safe and affordable housing for LGBTQI+ people, especially youth, and those who experience family violence in homes and gender-based violence, engaging in legislative review regarding non-discrimination and enact laws that specifically prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sexual characteristics. Now, this would include making amendments to the Equal Opportunity Act to reflect this, as I just mentioned, updating social welfare policies that limit or prevent access to services, namely fixed address requirements, which discriminates against people in need of social services who do not have stable or permanent housing, support capacity building and gender and LGBTQI+ sensitivity training for public servants who are key stakeholders in providing social services, providing concrete and responsive mechanisms for complaints and redress when public servants infringe rights, providing continuous training for judicial officers, especially relating to the DVA 2020 amendments, engaging meaningfully with organizations working with LGBTI+ community on the community's needs and support services navigation, and ensuring that LGBTQI+ groups and vulnerable people are represented and included in law reform to protect and promote rights and address issues that concern them. So those are some of our policy recommendations to the government. And so lastly, I just want to provide you all with some updates of our work in 2023 so far, as well as stuff to look out for. For the year we've already had, we've begun a LGBTQI+ social support group. We've had community workshops and community activities. We are hosting a clinical webinar on the 31st of this month. That's surrounding working with LGBTQI+ families. We're going to launch some clinical video series, continual legal education video series, and resource guides. We are aiming to engage in training for healthcare service providers in June and July. We're also going to have a social services navigation webinar. We are also going to have resource guides for LGBTQI+ youth and parents who want to support the LGBTQI+ youth in their life. And we're also going to launch new materials on our Wholeness and Justice blog. So there's many things to look out for this year. So I'm going to hand you over to Kathy with our closing remarks.
So before I close this media conference, I would just like to invite our media colleagues present. If they have any questions, if they would like to ask any questions, you will find the reactions button on the bottom of the screen and just click on that and you should see the raise hand icon. Any questions? I recognize Kim Boudram.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us from the Express. I mean, I would ask a question that I think is sort of typical, and it is really not to, steer the conversation towards that more political aspect, but we really must ask for a sort of overview, a rating, an opinion at this point in terms of policy and the state's responsibility towards the constitutional rights of all citizens, and how that is matching with policy, how it is matching with public education, and any type of enforcement within the law, within whatever it is that we respect all everyone's constitutional rights there. I hope that was clear. It's very generic, but it's really to just speak to where are we then, really, with all the policy, with all the public education. Yeah, I hope that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Angelique or Kellogg?
I can start, and Kellogg, please jump in, and Danielle. I will say that we are far from where we need to be. The Add All 3 campaign and the call to amend the Equal Opportunity Act has been repeated for over a decade. The Equal Opportunity Commission has supported it. And so we wait, and we call on the government to push forward in following through on promises made, year after year. So I think we still have a long way to go. However, we have pointed out, the amendments to the Domestic Violence Act, we're making work for us. We did have to push that, though. Maybe Danielle might speak to that. That it wasn't automatic that same-sex couples were easily accessing the protection. So that's something we did have to push, and we're making it, make that public education now. People are more aware of what their rights are. I do think we've seen improvement in justice seeking, folks coming to us to seek justice and wanting to say, yes, I would like to seek redress. In our first year, I think we noticed that our clients were less willing, or were not sure about whether they could seek redress. But going back to the government, I will say that I think there's a lack of political courage and a lack of political will to stand up for LGBT rights. In our experience, we hear a lot of silence. There's not a clear stand. And a part of that does have to do with the appeal from 2018 to now, the delays in that around decriminalization in the Sexual Offenses Act. So we're all waiting. We're waiting for that appeal to go through in some ways. But at the same time, we've been very insistent in the last, since 2020, we put out a policy agenda. We've shared it with all of government. We've said these are 13 action points that you can meaningfully do to transform the lived experiences and to tackle the levels of discrimination. Some government folks ask, oh, well, where's the evidence? Well, we're providing evidence. We've been providing that evidence for some years, and now we have even more. LGBT organizations have been doing this work for a long time. And, we are asked sometimes to provide that evidence. So that is what we're doing. And we're also tired, right? I mean, I think in some ways we're tired. And so this is why Wholeness and Justice was born in 2020, out of a lot of frustration that we have to take matters into our own hands, fill in those gaps, and figure out how to make social services and institutions and the law and policies work for us when there are no protections. But there's still a lot to do. Kellogg, Danielle, thoughts?
I wanted to just make mention of the case from the Court of Appeal of Rishi Prasad against Cascadia Hotel. The Equal Opportunities dismissed his complaint, and he had to go through the back door of appealing it to get through. So he was a homosexual man, and because he was homosexual, the person, his superior, used to make advances towards him. But because the Equal Opportunity Act doesn't cater for sexual orientation and person's gender identity, the court had to navigate, because the parliamentarians are not willing to amend the act to provide specific protection for members of the LGBTQ community. they are saying that case, the defense from the supervisor was that he is homosexual. So even if I made my heterosexual advances towards him, it shouldn't bother him. That's how ridiculous it is in the workplace for some persons. And why it is that it's sexual discrimination against heterosexual couples, but members of the community, LGBTQIA community, they are not afforded the same protection. So again, the courts try, and the court in that case, I give the judicial officers props for giving that young man redress. However, Parliament still has not, even after that judgment, considered amending the Equal Opportunities Act.
Thank you for that, Angelique and Daniel. I don't think I have much to add as it relates to the question. But I just want to say that the policy brief as well expounds on some of these points and some of the gaps that exist, legislative gaps that exist, and also provides very specific action points and recommendations, as well as a list of what the government's responsibility is, or responsibilities are in relation to LGBTQI plus people.
Can I just add one thing that I think is important for media to know? We have engaged directly with stakeholders in the government. So I want to just make that clear. We do send them materials, we engage with ministers, and at the same time, we want to engage the public. And so I think it's a careful balance. And just recently with the housing issue, that's one of our key findings, and it's something we continuously ask about. We have sent specific requests, raising the alarm around housing, and we received your letter, and that's been about it. So we are going to keep pushing, but just to say that there are things that we continue to do, and calling on the government to respond, and the silence is certainly profound.
Thank you. Kim, your hand is still up. Do you have another question, or is that it?
No, I actually just have one more quick question, and that is to say that, government policy and their actions aside, it's not an unthinking public. And I mean, there have been more events by the community in the last, I think in the last few years. So I just wanted to know from your perspective, when those events are hosted, pride events, etc., and those may be the ones that a layperson like myself might be more familiar with, but there may be so many more events taking place in the country now. And I wanted to know what the response has been from outside the LGBTQI community. How has the national community embraced it? How safe do people feel hosting their events out in the streets or wherever? And just maybe how the public perception has grown from your point of view.
It's a great question. I would say that I've seen a lot of growth, and I do think that the public, as you say, it's much more complex, and also there are many LGBTQI plus people. We are diverse. We just hosted an event celebrating LGBTQI plus voices, and we had a packed house. It's called Back Chat. We did that in collaboration with Bocas Lit Fest. I think that's an example where we had many different folks from the public and visiting folks for the Lit Fest come together to hear what LGBTQ plus people, community members, had to say in our artistic representations and expressions, and it was a really lovely event. So those moments, I think, give us a lot of hope. I also think that we receive a lot of support, from various community members, from media who's listened to us and are more careful in representation. So I do think we've seen a lot of shift and change. And I also see the growth. Young people are, young, queer, and trans, and youth are leading the way, and they guide us often in how things have changed, how they want, what they want from the future. And I think that's where we should be ever, listening and making sure that we create as many spaces for youth as possible. Kellogg?
Yeah, I agree. I think I do agree that there has been increase in visibility, and visibility is definitely important. It does come with risks, but nevertheless, there are lives that need to be lived. And so while folks are, living their lives and being more visible as a community, as LGBTQI plus people, I think it's important, regardless, that there are protections that exist for these folks in the event that in living their lives and being more visible, they experience any type of danger or risk. But like Angelique said, there's definitely a balancing act. But it's not in our politics to, tell people to hide or to be less of themselves and not be visible. But what we're asking for is, because we understand that not everyone is going to be very friendly, I guess, to you and your visibility, there needs to be protections that are in place in the event that, something does happen to you or you have been violated in any way in the course of living your life. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so thank you for your questions. And at this point, I would like to conclude this morning's media conference. As you can see on your screen, the Wholeness and Justice Insights report will be available for download on Wednesday, the 17th of May. We should be sharing a media statement tomorrow, and we will make sure it gets individually to you as well as to other colleagues. I would just want to move a vote of thanks for our speakers today: Angelique Nixon, Kellogg and Kim Colum, Akila Riley Richardson, Ray Allaby, and Danielle Jones, all of Caiso Sex and Gender Justice. We have Kellogg and Shaneri Brown, who were assisting us with the Zoom technical aspects. And of course, Johanna Ray Rez, our sign interpreter and another member of Caiso's team. I also would like to acknowledge Shaneri Brown for her graphic design for the Insights report. And finally, to extend a heartfelt thanks to you, our media colleagues and community partners, for joining us today and following our work. Thank you so much again, and I hope you have a very productive day. Signing out.